All right, listeners. Today we are diving into a real challenge. James Joyce's Finnegans Wake.
Oh, yes.
And, you all have requested that we unpack the first four paragraphs of this notoriously complex
Oh,
novel.
yeah.
And I have to admit, when I first looked at this, I was a bit intimidated.
Oh, sure.
But I figured, that's what deep dives are for, right?
Yeah.
We're going to take on this beast together.
That's right.
We're armed with some expert analysis.
Absolutely. And what's really interesting about these opening paragraphs is they're not just like a random jumble of words.
Right.
Joyce really carefully crafted them to be like a microcosm of the entire book.
Okay.
So it's like a seed that contains the DNA of the whole Finnegans Wake universe.
So it's not just about decoding these individual references,
Yeah.
but understanding how these first few sentences set the stage for everything that follows.
Exactly. Think of it like a map, a guide to the major themes and ideas that will unfold throughout the whole book.
Okay, that actually makes me feel a bit less lost already.
Okay.
So let's jump right in that very first sentence. River run, past Eve and Adams, from swerve of shore to bend of bay, brings us by a commodious vicus of recirculation back to Howth Castle and environs. Where do we even begin with that?
Well, Joyce really loved to ground his work in really specific locations.
Okay.
So the River Run is the River Liffey that flows through Dublin,
Okay.
and it passes Eve and Adams, which is a real church in Dublin.
Okay.
And then from there, the sentence traces the coastline all the way to the Hill of Howth, which is another landmark in the city.
So we're starting with a circular movement then, a journey that ends where it began. Is that significant?
Absolutely. The circularity of that sentence reflects one of the core concepts of Finnegans Wake, the cyclical nature of history.
Okay.
And in fact, the very last word of the book actually flows right back into the first one,
Right.
emphasizing this idea of eternal return.
Wow, okay. But then there's that phrase, commodious vicus of recirculation. Is vicus like a street or something?
Can be a street or a highway, but Joyce is being really clever here. Vicus is also like a play on the name Giambattista Vico,
Okay.
who was an Italian philosopher. And Vico believed that history moves in these cycles,
Okay.
with civilizations rising and falling in these predictable patterns.
Oh, so is Joyce saying that civilizations are doomed to just repeat their mistakes?
That's one of the big questions that Joyce wants us to grapple with.
Okay.
And he throws in another layer of meaning with that word commodious,
Okay.
which echoes the Roman Emperor Commodus,
Okay.
who was known for his decadence and, the decline of the Roman Empire under his rule.
So we have this sense of cyclical history, but also maybe a hint of potential downfall,
Yes.
of things falling apart even as they're being reborn.
Precisely. It's a complex and somewhat pessimistic view of history.
Yeah.
But it's also a reality that we see playing out again and again in the world.
Yeah, okay, so that first sentence sets the stage for this cyclical journey through history. But then in the next section, we're suddenly thrown into this world of knights and romance with the arrival of Sir Tristram, the Valar de Moors from North America.
Right. Joyce takes us from the streets of Dublin to the realm of Arthurian legend.
Okay.
Sir Tristram is a famous knight who is known for his love affair with Isolde.
Right.
And North America refers to Brittany, a region in France that's associated with their story.
But then we get this phrase, peninsulate war,
Yeah.
which seems a bit odd. Is that a real war?
Well, that's where Joyce's love of wordplay really comes in.
Yeah.
Peninsulate could refer to a war that is fought with a pen, a war of words, or like war of ideas.
It's like he's deliberately blurring the lines between literal and metaphorical conflict.
Exactly. And this ambiguity is really important because it sets up another one of the key themes of Finnegans Wake, duality.
Right.
Throughout the book, we see these opposing forces battling it out, often in the form of brothers,
Okay.
like Shem and Sean, who appear later in the story.
So this peninsulate war could be foreshadowing those conflicts later on.
Absolutely. It suggests that conflict is not just like a historical event,
Right.
but it's an inherent part of the human condition, like a struggle that's constantly being replayed in all these different forms.
So we have cyclical history.
Yeah.
We have this duality and conflict all packed into just a few sentences.
Huh.
And then just when we think we're getting a grasp on things, Joyce throws us another curveball. He mentions the Oconee River in Lawrence County, Georgia, where there happens to be a town named Dublin.
And this is where Joyce's concept of superfetation comes in. Have you ever heard of that term?
I can't say I have. What does it mean?
It's the idea of one world growing within another, a kind of mirroring or doubling.
Okay.
So by mentioning Dublin, Georgia, alongside Dublin, Ireland, Joyce is suggesting that these seemingly separate places and times are actually connected,
Okay.
reflecting similar patterns and themes.
So it's not just about history repeating itself, but about these patterns playing out on multiple levels in different places and times.
Yes, and that's why it's called superfetation. Think of it like a pregnant woman who becomes pregnant again before the first child is born.
Oh, wow.
You have multiple realities, multiple stories unfolding simultaneously.
That's a pretty mind-bending concept, and Joyce just casually drops it into the second paragraph.
That's Joyce for you. He's constantly challenging us to think in new and unexpected ways.
Yeah, and he's just getting started.
And he's just getting started.
I can't wait to see what other surprises he has in store for us. Let's keep digging. What happens next in this whirlwind tour of Dublin and beyond?
Well, the next few lines bring us back to Ireland with the arrival of St. Patrick and this phrase, Taff Taff, Dart Petrick,
Okay.
suggesting a kind of spiritual battle for the soul of Ireland.
Okay, so now we're layering in religious imagery.
Yeah.
And is Tauftof German? What's going on there?
You're right. Taff Taff echoes the German word for baptize.
Oh.
And then you have Dart Petrick, a play on St. Patrick.
Okay.
So we have this clash of languages, of cultures, all swirling together in a single phrase.
It's like he's creating this linguistic tapestry, weaving together these different threads of history and tradition.
Exactly. And within that tapestry, we see the conflict between Christianity, represented by St. Patrick, and the older pagan traditions of Ireland.
And that conflict is further emphasized by the Mishi Misha utterance, which I understand represents the voice of the goddess Bridget.
Yes, Bridget is a very powerful figure in Irish mythology. She's associated with this primordial feminine energy, and she later becomes a central character in Finnegans Wake, known as ALP.
Okay.
So we have this interplay between Christian and pagan male and female energies, all vying for dominance.
And then, as if that wasn't enough, we get back to the theme of brotherly conflict with the introduction of the Jacob and Esau story and Isaac Butt's displacement in Irish politics. Is that a coincidence?
Not at all. Joyce is deliberately drawing parallels between the biblical story and Irish history,
Okay.
highlighting this recurring pattern of sons usurping their fathers.
Right.
It's a theme that is deeply rooted in human psychology. You know, our primal desire for power and dominance.
So it's not just about brothers fighting, but about this larger struggle between generations, between the old order and the new.
Precisely. And this theme ties into what we were discussing earlier about cyclical history.
Okay.
The sons overthrow the fathers, but eventually they too will be overthrown.
Yeah.
It's a never-ending cycle of rebellion and replacement.
Wow. It's amazing how much Joyce packs into these first few paragraphs. It's like he's compressing a whole universe of ideas into a few sentences,
Yeah.
and we haven't even gotten to the fourth paragraph yet.
You're right, we've barely scratched the surface, but hopefully you're starting to see how these opening lines lay the groundwork for everything that follows.
Definitely. It's like we've been given a set of keys to unlock the mysteries of Finnegans Wake, and I'm definitely ready to see where they lead us next.
Then let's dive into the next part of this journey, where we encounter some truly fascinating characters and allusions that will deepen our understanding of Joyce's vision.
Okay, so we're in the aftermath of that thunderclap, that fall we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And there's a line that mentions Old Parr, a man who supposedly lived to be over 150 years old.
Right.
He's juxtaposed with the phrase Wall Street, which is a clear reference to the financial world.
Yeah.
So is Joyce suggesting some kind of connection between long life and financial ups and downs, like they both follow these unpredictable cycles?
I think you're right on there. Old Parr could represent this idea of enduring through time, of weathering the storms of fortune, both literally and metaphorically.
And that connects to the image of the fallen giants Tumty Tumtoes lying in Phoenix Park. It's almost like a humorous reference to Humpty Dumpty,
Exactly.
who also took a great fall.
Joyce loved to play with these nursery rhyme figures, these familiar characters from childhood,
Right.
but he also imbues them with a deeper meaning.
Okay.
The fallen giant can be seen as a symbol of HCE, the main character of Finnegans Wake, whose fragmented body represents the city of Dublin itself.
So Dublin is this fallen giant, this once great city now in a state of decay.
Yeah.
And then we get this chaotic battle scene at the giant's upturned Pike Point place, where oranges have been laid to rust upon the green since Dellen's first loved Louis. What is happening here?
Well, this passage is packed with historical and political allusions.
Sure.
Oranges could refer to the Orangemen, a Protestant group in Ireland,
Okay.
while green represents the Catholic Irish.
Okay.
Devlin might be a play on the devil, suggesting a battle between good and evil.
Right.
And Louis is another name for the river Liffey. So again, we're brought back to the central image of Dublin.
It's like he's compressing centuries of Irish history with all its conflicts and divisions into just a few lines, and the oystery gods and fishy gods battling it out. Those sound like ancient tribes or factions.
Right. There's a lot of debate about who those groups represent.
Okay.
Some scholars think they might allude to different waves of invaders or even to pre-Christian deities.
Wow.
But the point is, Joyce is evoking the sense of ongoing struggle of a land marked by conflict and upheaval.
And it all ties back to that idea of cyclical history we were talking about earlier. It's like these battles are just different versions of the same story playing out again and again.
Exactly. And then we have the Hoyt Boyce of Hoodiehead.
Right.
A figure who sounds a bit sinister, perhaps even hinting at religious extremism.
Right.
Remember, the White Boys were a real historical group known for their violent resistance to British rule in Ireland.
And Hoodiehead might be another reference to the Hill of Howth, that key landmark that keeps popping up.
Right.
It's like Joyce is creating this map of Dublin, but it's a map layered with history, mythology, and personal memories.
You're picking up on something really important there. For Joyce, Dublin wasn't just a physical place.
Yeah.
It was a landscape of the mind, a repository of stories and experiences stretching back through time.
And within that landscape, we hear this cry of despair. Assegates and boomerang strums, Sod's brood, be me fear, Sanglorians save. It feels like a lament for all the suffering that's been inflicted on the Irish people.
You're right to hear that Anguish, Sod's brood, is a reference to the Irish people, and the speaker seems to be expressing a deep fear for their future. It's a reminder that these historical cycles of violence and conflict have real consequences, real human costs.
Yeah, it's almost too much to bear. And then in the midst of all this darkness, we get this strange and provocative line, what beta metal loves, seduced by what Tigo absolvers.
Ah, yes, one of Joyce's classic word puzzles.
Right.
It seems like gibberish at first, but if you break it down, you start to see the layers of meaning.
So what's he getting at here?
Well, beta meta loves could refer to temptresses or seductresses.
Okay.
And Tigo absolvers sounds like a play on tete-a-tete absolvers.
Okay.
Suggesting religious figures like priests who hear confessions and offer absolution.
So is he suggesting a reversal of roles here, where the supposed moral authorities are actually the corruptors?
That's a very interesting interpretation, and it would certainly fit with Joyce's skeptical view of institutions, particularly religious institutions. He wasn't afraid to challenge the hypocrisy and abuse of power he saw within those systems.
It's a pretty bold statement, especially considering the time period he was writing in. And then in the final lines of the fourth paragraph, we get this image of renewal again. The oaks of Ade now they lie in peat, yet elms leap where asks lay. Fall if you but will, rise you must.
Yes, after all that darkness and despair, we see nature itself participating in this cycle of death and rebirth.
Right.
The fallen oaks, representing the old order, nourish the soil for new elms to grow. And then there's that wonderful pun, fall if you but will, rise you must.
Right.
Which brings in themes of sexuality and resurrection.
It's like even in the face of death, even after the most devastating fall, there's always the possibility of new life, of rising again.
Exactly. And that sense of hope, of resilience, is essential to understanding Finnegans Wake.
Okay.
It's not just a nihilistic vision of history repeating itself endlessly.
Right.
It's a recognition that within those cycles, within those patterns of fall and redemption, lies the potential for transformation.
Yeah.
For something new and unexpected to emerge.
It's a lot to take in, and we've only covered 4 paragraphs. But I feel like we're starting to see the bigger picture, the scope of Joyce's ambition.
You're right, we've only just begun to explore the depths of Finnegans Wake. But hopefully you're starting to appreciate the beauty and complexity of this extraordinary work.
Definitely. It's like we've been given a glimpse into a whole new universe, a universe where language itself is alive and constantly evolving. I can't wait to see where this journey takes us next. Okay, so we've journeyed through these first 4 paragraphs now, and wow, it's been quite a ride.
It certainly has. We encountered fallen giants and warring gods and seductive temptresses, all within the span of a few sentences.
It really is incredible how much Joyce packs into just these opening lines, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around the bigger picture. Like, what are some of the key takeaways from our analysis so far?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that Finnegans Wake is not like a linear narrative.
Right.
It's more like a dream where these images and ideas, they flow freely and they connect in all these unexpected ways.
So it's not about trying to follow a plot,
Right.
but about experiencing the language, like the way it creates this swirling, multi-layered world.
Exactly. And within that world, certain themes keep recurring, like the cyclical nature of history.
Right.
Joyce Drawing on Vico's ideas, he presents this universe where falls are inevitable.
Yeah.
But they also contain the seeds of renewal.
It's like that image of the oaks falling into peat, right? Nourishing the soil for new elms to grow.
Exactly.
Death and rebirth constantly intertwined.
Precisely. And that cycle is mirrored in the structure of the book itself.
Okay.
The last word flows back into the first one, creating this sense of eternal recurrence, a story that has no beginning and no end.
We also talked about the importance of duality and conflict.
Yes.
Especially the recurring motif of the brother battle.
Right. Think of Cain and Abel, Romulus and Remus, even the rivalry between Shem and Sean, the two brothers who represent these key figures in Finnegans Wake. It's a primal struggle that drives so much of human history.
And then there's the father-son conflict, which also seems to be like a major force at play.
Absolutely. We see it in the biblical allusions, in the references to figures like Jonathan Swift, even in that image of the sons brewing their own beer.
Right.
It's about the struggle between generations, the passing of the torch from old to new.
And Joyce seems to suggest that this process is often messy and violent.
Yeah.
Like rebellion, even patricide might be necessary to break free from the past and to create something new.
That's a very provocative interpretation, and it's certainly one that Joyce encourages us to consider.
Yeah.
He wants us to question authority, to challenge the accepted narratives of history and tradition.
And he does that through language.
Yes.
Through this incredibly dense and elusive prose. It's challenging, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
It is.
Every phrase, every image is like a puzzle box just waiting to be unlocked.
And the beauty of it is that there's no single right answer. Joyce invites us to participate in the creative process, to bring our own interpretations and insights to the text.
So after all this unpacking and analysis, what does it all mean for us, the readers? Why should we care about these complex themes and this challenging wordplay?
Because Finnegans Wake is not just a book, it's an experience. It's a journey into the depths of language history and the human psyche.
Okay.
It's a work that can change the way you think, the way you see the world.
It's a reminder that reality is not fixed or stable.
Right.
But fluid and ever-changing.
Yeah.
It challenges our assumptions about history language, even ourselves.
And it's a celebration of the power of imagination, of the endless possibilities of language to create meaning and beauty.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive, but I feel like we've only just begun to explore this rich tapestry of Finnegans Wake.
I agree.
It's a book that demands multiple readings, each one revealing new layers of meaning and complexity.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I encourage you to keep exploring, to keep digging deeper. Don't be afraid to get lost in the language, to embrace the ambiguity and the challenge. You might be surprised by what you discover.
You know, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you all with one final thought. Given that the fall of the father figure seems inevitable, what does that say about the possibility of true renewal and redemption? Is it a genuine new beginning or just another turn of the cycle?
That's a great question, and it's one that Joyce leaves open for us to ponder.
Yeah.
There's no easy answer, but the very act of questioning, of searching for meaning is part of the journey, and Finnegans Wake is a journey that's well worth taking.
Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the opening pages of Finnegans Wake.
Yes, thank you.
We hope it's inspired you to pick up the book yourself and embark on your own exploration of this challenging and rewarding masterpiece. Happy reading.
Go to FinnegansWakeNotes.net for full explanation of the text, and please don't forget to hit like.